sugya of halva, of loans, and mashkan, where an item of chametz was taken as a security, as a collateral for a loan, and whether it's in possession of the lender or the borrower. And the Gemara was explained the brises. The Gemara explained the brises that where there was a machlokes between Rabbi Meir, where there was a machlokes whether or not the lender is responsible or is in possession of the chametz, or the borrower is in possession of the chametz when a Jew lent money to a non-Jew, but there's no machlokes when a non-Jew lent a Jew. And the Gemara explained that it's talking about hirhinu etzloi, that the lender already received the item that was in collateral, was the guarantee for the loan. And the machlokes was based upon Rabbi Yitzchak, where Rabbi Yitzchak had said that when someone borrows money and gives, when someone lends money and then receives an item as a mashkon, as security for the loan, that item becomes theirs. They acquire the item. And therefore, the Torah says that when they give it back to a poor person, because it's their pillow blanket, so they give it back to them that night, l'chati tzedakah. That is going to be a tzedakah. It's tzedakah because they acquired it and they're giving it back nevertheless, so that the borrower can use it for that night. Now, the machlokes is going to be based upon that the Tana Kama holds that this is true where the Torah is speaking about, where a Jew lent to a Jew. However, by a non-Jew, there is no acquisition, and therefore there's no tzedakah. And so when the Jew lends the non-Jew, the chametz is not in his possession. Whereas Rabbi Meir says kal v'chomer. Rabbi Meir says no, it's quite the contrary. If when a Jew lends to a Jew, you acquire the loan, then for sure when you borrow from a non-Jew, and the basis for this is that with a Jew there's an obligation to pay back and an assumption that he will pay back the loan, so there's less need for the acquisition of the surety, and yet the Torah says that the item is acquired. So
according to the Svara that it becomes the lender's possession, and then he gives it, it's daka, he gives it to the poor person every night.
Yep.
So does the poor did they have to make a kinyan every time?
No, they're just using it. It doesn't have to be that there's a reacquisition. It's allowing them to use it. In any case, so let's go to that explanation. This is on Lamed Aleph Amud Beis, 31b. Let's begin at the 6th line in Tanakama. Tanakama Savahani Mili Yisrael Misrael. The Tanakama says that Rabbi Yitzchak says that there's an acquisition when somebody gets this collateral, that it becomes theirs. When a Jew lends it to a Jew and takes this as collateral for the debt. The Karina Bey Lachati Tzedakah, Aval Yisrael Menachri, but a Jew who lent a non-Jew and then took this as security for the debt, Loikani, he did not acquire. Rameir says Kavachomer, Yisrael Yisrael Kani. It's a Kavachomer. If a Jew acquires from another Jew, Yisrael Menachri Lakoshke, wouldn't it be obvious? Aval Nachri Shehil Ves Yisrael. However, when a non-Jew lends money to a Jew, Al Chimtzai, and the Jew gives him chametz as his security for the debt, everybody is going to agree that there is a transgression, meaning that the chametz was still in possession of the Jew, because this idea that the security is acquired by the lender is not true by a non-Jew, because that's not the way they see the security. This is a Torah concept, and so only for a Jew there would be that kind of acquisition. Tanan, so we learned in a Mishnah. In our Mishnah it says that when the non-Jew lent money to the Jew and then took the chametz from the Jew as security, which in this brisa said everybody agreed would be a transgression. In our Mishnah it says it's permissible in ana, meaning that you can benefit from it because there was no prohibition transgressed. Even though that the chametz was in the hands, in possession of the non-Jew, but it was still owned by the Jew, and ha'amris nachar Yisrael loikani. He said that he doesn't acquire anything, so the acquisition didn't happen retroactively or during that time. So why is he not transgressing in our Mishnah? So Gemara now makes a new distinction as well. So there's another aspect. Did the lender say, I lend you this money and I'm taking your barrel of beer as security against the loan? And if you default on the day that the terms come, that the loan comes to term, if you default, this is mine from today, me'achshav. So he expressly says it's a retroactive acquisition. That's a part of the terms of this loan. I lend the money today. You have 30 days to repay this. If you default, this security that I'm taking today retroactively is mine. And so then retroactively it'll be okay. And that's what the case of our Mishnah is talking about. The brisa, which says that the Jew was in possession and therefore transgressed, was in a case where he did not say ma'achshav. So only on the date of default is the chametz in the possession of the non-Jew. And how do we know that there's this distinction between me'achshav now and if somebody says that it's retroactive, meaning it happens from the moment that we say this? The Tanya we learn, a non-Jew who deposits a nice bread in possession of a Jew. Now, their breads used to be like a flat bread on an oven wall, and then in larger ovens, they sometimes make loaf breads. And so this was a larger, nicer loaf bread, pas porni. So this is a non-Jew's chametz in possession of, it's in the hands of the Jew over Pesach. And yet he does not transgress because he did not acquire this security against the debt. And if he said, here, take this as security for the debt, now you have something in hand. So by doing that, by saying that this, here you have something in hand, is an indication that the acquisition would be from now. And if I default on the debt, the non-Jew is telling the Jew, if I default on the debt, then it's yours already today. So therefore, over, he will transgress for having this in possession on Pesach. What distinction is there at the beginning of the end? Must be that the distinction is because you have this in hand. There's an indication that the acquisition happens now, and there's a distinction between me'achshav, that from now this is yours if later I default, versus if you don't say that. Shmamina. The brisa now we're going to learn about assumed possession in a shop. Tana Rabbana Chanus Shel Yisrael, a store owned by a Jew, or Malai Shel Yisrael, and all of the stock that's in all of the items in the store belong to the Jewish owner. But the people working in the store are non-Jews. And they come in and out there. All chametz that you find in there is not assumed to be that of the workers, but rather that of this shop owner, and it's going to be prohibited in benefit as chametz that was in possession of the Jew of Pesach. For sure, you can't eat it. However, if the shop belongs to a non-Jew and all of the items for sale belong to the non-Jew, even if the Jews, the workers, the people working in the shop are Jewish, and they come in and out. The assumption is that any chametz you find there after Pesach belongs to the owner and nachri, and so you can eat it, and for sure you can benefit from it. The next Mishnah deals with chametz that had a wall collapse on it, and now it's even if you know it's there. We saw this earlier about checking for it, and here the question is how far deep you have to dig after it to try and extract it and remove it. Chametz that a collapsed wall fell on it. Harehu kamavur. That is assumed and considered removed. The mitzvah is to make sure that chametz is removed from your place, and indeed you could say not happen by itself, but it's removed. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says that there's a limit. It has to be that a dog will not search after it. In other words, it's deep enough and buried enough that a dog will not dig to try and get it. In other words, if they do, if the dog can smell it and will go after it, there's a concern that it'll become uncovered on Pesach, and it's not really mavur, it's not really removed from your possession. Besides for that, it buried. Since you cannot remove it, actually you have to, in your heart, nullify it, which is the bitul that we talked about before, that on a Torah level, that's sufficient, where somebody says, in my heart, in my mind, this, whether you have to say so or think about it, that the chametz is null and void and like the dust of the earth. So that's required here as well, because you know there's chametz and you simply can't access it. Tana, and we learned in the Brisa, kama fisas akelef. How deep does something need to be that a dog will not smell it and not dig after it? 3 tefachim, say 10 inches. This that Shmuel said, that the only way to protect money is in the ground. They had coins, and they were likely and easily stolen and easily lost. So the only proper shmira, and this is something that comes up many times throughout Shas, ein shmira lekesef ela bekarka. There's only one valid way of checking, of protecting money. If you don't have a safe, the safest way is to put it to bury it underground. Do you need 3 tefachim for that as well? It has to be 3 tefachim underneath the ground, about 10 inches. He says, no, by reicha, by something that gives off an aroma, a scent. So you need 3 tefachim so the dog won't go after it. Hasam mishum ichsuye me'ena. But if you only need it out of sight, therefore you don't need 3 tefachim. The kama. So how much do you need? Amar Papa misichra tefach. So Raf from the son of Papa of Sichra said tefach. 1 tefach is enough. Let's say about 3 inches. The halacha of teruma is that when somebody misuses teruma, eats teruma belongs to a kohen. A non-kohen is not allowed to eat it. If somebody eats teruma that belongs to a kohen, and teruma by definition belongs to a kohen, since it belongs to a kohen, there's the monetary damage of the loss to the kohen, as well as the prohibition. Teruma is an elevated kodesh state, and a non-Kohen is not allowed to eat it. So if they did so inadvertently, they have the obligation and the penalty. The obligation is the restoration of the truma that was taken, and there is the penalty. The penalty is a 25%, which is called a chomesh, a fifth, which is 25%, which is a fifth of the total once you have 125%. So it's that halachic fifth, which is 25%, must be added as well. The Gemara is going to tell us that there's a question: do you add when you have to make restitution? Is this per a weight or per a value? And the difference is going to be in our Mishnah, because chametz on Pesach obviously has no value. However, it does have weight. It does have it's an item. So somebody, let's say, took a pound of grapes from Teruma and is going to have to repay that. So that pound that they give back, even though that the first pound was valueless because grapes wouldn't be chametz on Pesach. So it took a loaf of bread. So it from Teruma, so that it is valueless because it's chametz, but there's a loaf of bread, and so when they give back a loaf of bread, who cares what the change in value is? They owe the volume and not the value. Ha'ochel terumas chametz bePesach. Somebody eats teruma that's chametz on Pesach. B'shogeg mishalim kerem. If you did so inadvertently, so then they're going to be obligated in keren, the principal amount, and chomesh, and the 25% increase as well. Now, what was done inadvertently? There are two transgressions here. There's the chametz part on Pesach, so that could be even intentional. However, they didn't realize it was teruma. That's what it means, shogeg. So in regards to the teruma misuse, that's what was inadvertent. They inadvertently ate teruma, which was chametz, and they may have realized that they're not allowed to eat chametz on Pesach. Nevertheless, as far as teruma goes, that was an inadvertent transgression. They ate the teruma, the elevated produce that was given to the Kohen, and that was chametz, and they should not have eaten it. So now they have to pay back the principal plus 25%. So again, the beginning of the Mishnah, bottom of 31b, ha'ochel terumas chametz. Somebody eats teruma of chametz on Pesach, b'shogeg, and he didn't realize it was teruma, so that was inadvertent. Mishalim kerem chametz. So he has to pay the principal plus 25%. B'mezid, if he did so intentionally, pater mitashlumin, he's exempt from tashlumin, from payment. Me'etzim, even we saw this earlier, that teruma, not only was it edible to the Kohen, but if it became tamei and the Kohen wasn't allowed to eat it, he could use it as fuel, even when in a tamei state. So this chametz, teruma, is not even fuel, because you're not allowed to benefit from chametz. So the Kohen had no value in this at all. And the Gemara is going to make a distinction. Why is it when it was inadvertent, he didn't realize it was teruma, then he pays back 125%, and when it's meaning the principal plus the plus a penalty, and when he's paying for chametz that when he's paying for chametz teruma that he knew was teruma, and he ate as chametz, and then he doesn't pay back anything, is no value whatsoever to this item, not even as fuel in a fire. So Tanan Hasa. So we're going to bring a Mishnah, and we're going to try and analyze that Mishnah to teach us the principal idea of that when inadvertently eating teruma, that there's a payment, the restitution for teruma is lefi mida, is by volume and not by value. If somebody eats teruma, this elevated produce, inadvertently, mishalim kerem chametz, he has to pay back 100%, which is the principal, plus a fifth, which is the halachic fifth, 25%, which is 125%, and then the 25% is a fifth of the total restitution. Regardless if somebody eats the teruma or they drink the teruma, and now we're on 32a, which is today's daf. And even if they don't eat it or drink it, but they use it as ointment, so that also is absorbed in the body and counts as drinking it. Whether they misused and essentially stole inadvertently the teruma, whether it was tamei or was already impure, and the kohen only had value in it in as much as that he can use it as fuel, or whether it was truma tahora, which the kohen had a right to eat. Mishalim chomesh v'chumsha d'chumsha, and if he misused the restitution as well, so now he has 125%. He's going to pay another 25% on the restitution plus the penalty, and so it'll be a fifth of the fifth as well, and he's going to have to add essentially a quarter to that as well, which would be like 32%. Niboilu kishu mishalim lefi mida mishalim or lefi dami mishalim. When he pays back, does he pay back the value or the volume? If the price had dropped, at first it was very expensive, and then it dropped. So let's go back to the grapes idea, okay? Because this is not talking about chametz per se. So he had a pound of grapes. A pound of grapes was 4 zuz, and that's the price it was when he stole it, essentially, when he ate the teruma, and now the price is $1 per pound of grapes. So the price went down. So he's only going to pay back $1. He's not making restitution to the value of what he stole. So there's no question. The vada kedemikar meshalim. For sure he's going to have to pay back the value of the grapes at the moment that he stole them. For sure he's going to have to pay back at least the value of what it was. Because it can't be any worse than any other thief or robber or armed robbery, where the halacha is the tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah, kol hakazlani, any theft, mishalim kashas akzela, you always pay at the value of the moment of the theft itself. So the moment that you took it is the moment that you have to restore it to. And over here, if you took it at the value of grapes at that time of 4 zuz, 4 zuz per pound, so he has to pay back 4 zuz per pound, even though that the price dropped. So where is the question? If the price increased, when he stole it and misused this teruma, it was worth 1 zuz. And then the price went up, now it's worth 4 zuz. So what's the halach? Do we say, look, you took a pound, you have to pay back a pound, even though a pound is of greater value today, but that's what you took, and you have to pay back the volume of what you took. The amalei griva achal griva mishalim. You took a pound, give back a pound. Odilmo perhaps lefi dama mishalim. Do you give back the value? And bezuza achal bezuza mishalim. You ate, even though you ate a pound, but you ate one zuz worth. So now you have to give back 1 zuz worth, which may be only a quarter pound. Amar Rav Yosef Tashamat. So Rav Yosef says, come in here. Achal gregeres v'shilim leitamar. If somebody inadvertently ate teruma from a kohen, and it was a dried fig, and in return gave a fresh fig. Tavi olav bracha. There's a blessing upon him for giving back this fresh fruit instead of the dried fig. Now, if you say that really, when he repays back, what he's supposed to be paying back is the volume. That's the bracha that he gets for giving the same volume but a better product. Why the achal griva de gregeris? Because he ate a measure of dried figs. The shavi zuza, which is of a lesser value. The kayahiv griva de tamara, the shavi arba, and he's giving back fresh figs, the same measure. Like he ate a pound of dried figs, which is 1 zuz, and he's giving back a pound of fresh figs, which is which is worth 4 zuz. So he's giving back the same volume, but in monetary value, it's worth more. And so that's why he gets a bracha. But if he's paying back the value, he's just giving back $1 worth of fresh figs. So what's the distinction? So he took $1 worth of dried figs, and he's giving back $1 worth of fresh figs. The restitution is exactly who cares that it is fresh or not? He's giving back exactly the same value, the same value, $1 worth of whatever it was. Amai tavel bracha. So what's this big bracha that he gets? Mezuzah achal. Mezuzah kamashal. He took 1 zuz. He's giving back 1 zuz. Amar Abai says, no, that's not proof. It may be correct that he has to pay back lefi mida by volume and not by value and not by the monetary amount he took. But this is not proof because could be the brachas for something else. It could be that he's giving back the value, the cost. And the reason he gets a bracha, because he ate something that has less buyers, and therefore it's not easy to sell. And he paid back fresh figs, which is easier to sell, and is going to get his money returned. The Kohen will get his money returned quicker. So now we're going to try and prove it from our Mishnah and really understand our Mishnah of why in the first part of the Mishnah, when it was inadvertent, he inadvertently ate the teruma, he has to pay back 125%, even though that was chametz and Pesach, which has no value whatsoever. So Tanan, somebody eats a teruma on which is chametz on Pesach. B'shogeg, if he did so inadvertently, mishalim kervachem, he pays the principal plus the penalty of 25%. Now, if you say that you have to pay back the volume of what you took, so you ate a loaf of bread, you have to give back a loaf of bread after Pesach, even though that it was a total valueless item when you stole it, when you took it, but you have to pay back the volume, the measure of what you took. So you give back that much. Shop it. So it makes sense that you have to pay back the principal plus 25%, because even though that it had no monetary value, but it did take up space, it did measure on a scale. But if you say that you have to pay back by value, on Pesach has no value. So for sure, there should be no restitution. So that's the Gemara seems to learn our Mishnah that the reason that there's restitution is because of it actually is it takes up space. It does have measure on the scale, so there's volume there, and that's what the restitution is, and that's why if you did so inadvertently, you have to pay back. But because otherwise it has no value. The Gemara says actually there is an opinion that there is value, because we had Rabbi Yossi Aglili that says you're allowed to benefit from chametz on Pesach. In Hamani, Rabbi Yossi Aglili, maybe our Mishnah is the opinion of Rabbi Yossi Aglili, who says the Amar chametz Pesach that chametz on Pesach is permitted in benefit, and so yes, the Kohen has teruma, but he has a benefit that he can use it for fuel under his fire, in his fire. Well, if that's the case, that there is value to chametz on Pesach, so why, if he did so intentionally, does he not have to pay back anything? When he did so intentionally, he is exempt from all payment, even midmei eitzim, even from, he doesn't have to pay back the value of wood, meaning the value of fuel. If it's Rabbi Yossi Aglili, why is he exempt of restitution if he did so intentionally? Midmei eitzim, and from paying back the value of the wood. Now, if you learn that the restitution of teruma is lefi mida, according to the measure, so we could say the distinction is when you did so intentionally, you're not paying back teruma anymore, because that's and the penalty, because that's a form of atonement, and you only get that if you did it inadvertently. If you did so intentionally, that's a greater sin, and you don't get the opportunity for that restitution, and then you're charged as a thief, and that's based on value. But if you tell me that really all teruma on chametz on Pesach has value, and the reason, and really you're paying back the value and not the scale, the midah, the measure, the volume. Well, then if you did so intentionally, it should also be there should have restitution, because at least the demei etzim, the Kohen has value in using it as fuel. And Gemara says actually you don't pay back for a different reason, not because the teruma is valueless, but perhaps the reason he's not repaying it is because the Mishnah follows the opinion of Rabbi Tzvi Fischer. We mentioned the other day that there's a concept of double jeopardy where you can only be held liable for the more severe of the punishments, and you'd be exempt on account of that, of the lesser of the punishments. And since and Rabbi Tzvi Fischer takes that even to a case of kares, where Beis Din is not going to hold you responsible for eating chametz on Pesach, but nevertheless it is a death sentence from Shamayim, and as such you're not held responsible for the restitution and penalty. That he would exempt payment of damages when somebody transgressed Yom Kippur as well, which is not based in a capital punishment, but it is a death sentence from Shemayim, as well as just like Shabbos, which is a capital punishment, a transgression, and therefore there is an exemption of restitution on account of the capital punishment. Rabbi Tzvi Fischer took it even to kares. So that's the explanation that the Gemara offers as a rejection of proof from our Mishnah. It says no proof from our Mishnah, because perhaps the reason of our Mishnah is really there's no measure. You're not paying back by measure, by volume. You're paying back by value, by the actual monetary value of the item. And chametz and Pesach really does have some value because you can use it as fuel. And when you did so intentionally, the reason you exempt is not because there's no value, but because it's a double jeopardy. Since eating chametz and Pesach is so severe that it's kares, there's the soul cut off from its source. It's a severe punishment from Shemayim. The restitution would be double jeopardy, would be paying a second punishment, and therefore Beis Din would not make you pay back. Ketanai. Let's say this is a machlokas tanoim. Ha'ochel terumas chametz b'Pesach potem min hatashlumim midmei etzim devrei Rabbi Akiva. Our Mishnah essentially would be Rabbi Akiva. That somebody eats truma on Pesach is exempt from all payment. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri mechayev. However, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says that you are responsible for paying. Amalei Rabbi Akiva. So Rabbi Akiva says, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri v'chi mahana yesh le. What value, what benefit did the Kohen have of this teruma that you have to restore to him? Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, Rabbi Akiva. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says to Rabbi Akiva, "Mahana yesh le'echol teruma termeya b'shar kol yimei hashana." Well, if somebody eats teruma termeya just on a regular day, and not Pesach, teruma, which only a Kohen is allowed to eat, that had become tamei, become spiritually impure, even a Kohen may not eat it. And yet, if somebody eats that on a regular day, they have to make restitution. Well, what benefit did the Kohen have about that? And yet you have to make restitution. Amalei, so Rabbi Akiva responded, wait, there he's allowed to burn it and benefit from the burning of it. Amalei, on a regular day of the year, teruma tameya, even though he may not eat it, but he has a right to use it as fuel in a fire. Tomar bezeh, but on chametz on Pesach, he may not eat it, and he may not even use it for fire. So there's no value to the Kohen. So why does he have to make restitution? It would be similar to teruma of fruit juices, shenitma, that became tamei, where you're not allowed to eat it, and it can't be used as fuel. So there's no value to the Kohen. And this would be true about somebody who had dedicated the teruma prior to it becoming chametz. So he had fresh grain and took teruma off of that, and then it became chametz on Pesach. But if somebody took teruma that already became chametz, and then gifted that to the Kohen as teruma, it's separated as teruma, it actually never took effect as teruma, because the halach is that you have to give teruma that is edible to the Kohen, and this from the start had no value and no chametz meaning at all, because it didn't count as a separation of teruma. It doesn't count as teruma. Tanya idach, we have another brisa. V'nasa lakohen es hakodesh. You have to give to the kohen that which is that which is holy. Dovar haroi leis kodesh, that which can remain sanctified. Prat l'ochel trumas chametz v'pesach, as opposed to somebody eats truma of chametz on Pesach. Shapatam and tashlum me'etzim, he doesn't have to give anything back, because he can't give back something worthy of kodesh, because chametz is unworthy of kodesh. It can't. It's worthless at this point. That's the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer Yaakov. Rabbi Eliezer Chasma Machayev. However, Rabbi Eliezer Chasma says no. If you eat chametz on Pesach, that's teruma. You still have to make restitution. Same machlokas that we saw before, but we'll see that there's a small distinction. Rabbi Eliezer Yaakov, Rabbi Eliezer Chasma. So Rabbi Eliezer Yaakov said to Rabbi Eliezer Chasma the same as Rabbi Akiva said to Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Wait, what value did the Kohen have in the teruma? It's chametz on Pesach. He has no value, so he couldn't benefit from it. So why do you have to make restitution? Any teruma all year round that became tamei, spiritually impure, that the halacha is if somebody eats that, they have to make restitution, and there's no value either. And why does he have to pay back? Amalai said to him, so Rabbi Eliezer Yaakov responded the same as Rabbi Akiva had responded. Wait, all year round, it's true that truma tamei, even the Kohen may not eat, but at least there's value in as much that he can use it as fuel. Whereas chametz on Pesach, he's not even allowed to benefit from it even as fuel. He may not. He doesn't have a permission to eat it, and he may not even use it as fuel. So Rabbi Eliezer Chasma responded. So earlier, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri responded that Rabbi Eliezer Chasma is going to respond that this is the opinion of Rabbi Yossi Aglili, who says you're allowed to benefit from chametz on Pesach. He said to him, no, there is permission, even on chametz and Pesach, to use it as fuel. Because the kohen could either have it used, throw it in front of his dog, or can put it on as fuel and fire under his food. So this is the opinion of Rabbi Yossi Aglili that chametz on Pesach is beneficial. You're allowed to benefit from it. And so, therefore, there's a value, and you have to return it. And Rabbi Eliezer Yaakov, like Rabbi Akiva, are going to say, chametz and Pesach have no value, and therefore you don't have to pay back restitution if you did so intentionally, because you have to pay back according to its value. And in our Mishnah, when it was done inadvertently, it was because you pay back not value, but by the volume itself. So we go to Lamed Beis Hamid Beis. 32b. Amar Abaye. So Abaye says, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, this last opinion that we saw, and Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri all hold kulas svirlu chametz and Pesach hasabahana. They all follow the opinion, not like Rabbi Eliezer Chasma, who just said that, the reason why you make restitution of chametz and Pesach is because there's value to the chametz, because you can, Allah is like Rabbi Yossi Aglili, that you're allowed to benefit from chametz and Pesach. No, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov and Rabbi Akiva, and even Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, who didn't use that response to Rabbi Akiva, must all hold that chametz is prohibited on Pesach, even from benefit. So what's the basis of machlokes? Rabbi Akiva savar lefi damim mishal. Rabbi Akiva says you pay back the value, and therefore there's no value to chametz on Pesach, so you don't make any restitution. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri savar lefi mida mishal. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says no, you do pay back, because you're not paying back the value, you're paying back the measure, the volume, the scale of what it was. And so look, this bread had takes up space and it weighs on a scale, so that's what you have to pay back. And so in our Mishnah, and the statement of Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, we now have an explanation that the basis of the restitution is because you pay back lafi mida, by measure. And so even though the chametz has no value, it's essentially worthless to the kohen, but you have to give back whatever you took. You took a pound, you give back a pound. Pshita. The Gemara says that seems pretty obvious. Maybe he also follows the opinion of Rabbi Akiva that you pay only measure. The Omar that you pay back by not by measure, by value, but by the monetary value of this item, and therefore really there's no monetary value if you're not allowed to benefit. So why does he hold that there's restitution? And maybe Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, who's the first machlokas that disagreed with Rabbi Akiva, and the reason that there's restitution is mishum the savar like Rabbi Yisrael chametz Pesach mutabana, and the reason is because he holds that you're allowed to benefit from chametz on Pesach. Kamash malan. That's why Abaye says no, he doesn't agree with that. Now, but maybe that is correct, that he holds you're allowed to benefit from chametz on Pesach, and that's why you make restitution. The Gemara says can't be. So he should have responded to Rabbi Akiva the same way Rabbi Elazar Chasma in the end of the page responded to Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov and said, no, you can benefit from chametz on Pesach. You can give it to your dog. You can use it as fuel, meaning the opinion of Rabbi Yossi Aglili that you're allowed to benefit from chametz on Pesach. And in the first discussion, Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri did not make that response. You see that he does not hold that there's actually a permission to benefit from chametz on Pesach. Must be the reason he disagrees is not because there's benefit, but because you may not benefit from chametz on Pesach, and the kohen had no benefit in this teruma. However, the reason you have to make restitution 125% is because you took something of volume that actually measures something, and teruma is returned in volume, and that's why there's restitution that has to be made. Tomorrow we'll continue with some of the halachas of returning